Welcome back to Sacred Synergy. Episode 8 features award-winning fine artist Angela Manno. Angela will go into more of her background as we open the episode. Now, I'm trying to keep these intros shorter, if you can't tell, trying to get to the meat of the conversation. But she has done incredible work. She's been commissioned by NASA. She's done commissions for the Vatican, as well as for a number of other private collectors throughout the world. And her work is a blend of earth, a blend of spirit. It takes natural materials and then turns them into fine art. So Angela will go into more about her biography, more about her current body of work. I actually just today is Thursday, March 5th, and I just received from Orbis Books this little mailer and two of Angela's featured upcoming titles where she was the illustrator or the artist rather, for two books here coming out with Orbis: Beyond Factory Farming by James Robinson, and then Come Have Breakfast by Elizabeth Johnson. So exciting that I received this today as I'm getting ready to put this podcast out there. But this was an Ash Wednesday recorded episode, as you'll be able to see based upon the mark on my forehead. But grateful for Angela, for her time, for her wisdom on creativity and how we can all be artists to some degree that she was willing to share in this episode. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Angela Manno. Angela, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can you please tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do with most of your time in the world?
Okay. Well, I'm a visual artist, and I've been working as a professional artist for the past 50 years. And I spent the past 10 years creating a series of portraits of threatened and endangered species in the Byzantine-Russian style of iconography. And before that, I spent about 10 years learning and practicing the traditional method of iconography under a master iconographer from Russia. And during the latter part of that apprenticeship, however, I began to feel something was missing. And as an informal student of Thomas Berry and my deep interest in ecology and cosmology, I felt it was necessary for my own integrity to, and for the world at large, to expand the canon of images and to integrate or bring in nature more centrally, as opposed to the traditional icons, which is focused on the human divine relationship, and nature is relegated to the background. So I created, I'm up to 36 images now, icons of endangered species, and I've been exhibiting my work for the past, since about 2019. I've been exhibiting this series all up and down the northeastern U.S. at Yale University and a lot of university art galleries and nonprofit galleries in New York City. And I also just finished a series of icons of factory farmed animals for a book cover with Orbis Books that's coming out in June, and the title is Beyond Factory Farming, A Contemplative Prophetic Approach to Food by James Robinson, who is a professor. You may know him at Iona University. I take commissions. I'm working on commissions now, and it goes on. I don't know how much you want me to tell you, but, the main thing now is I've got this card deck, the Sacred Biodiversity card deck. That's it just hot off the press. It was released last month, and so I'm actually designing group reading exercises so I can bring people together and kind of stoke that synergy that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's very cool. I saw those cards recently. They look really neat.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I saw some links online. So
Okay.
whatever previews might be available, I haven't held them in my hands, but it looks pretty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
So, Angela, you and I initially met through the American Tarot Association through our board membership there. And
Yes.
what's great about the ATA is that it is a real amalgamation of people from all different backgrounds that have been drawn together in union by their love and passion and appreciation for Terre de Chardin's work.
Hmm.
You, of course, being an artist, are filling that niche within the ATA community there. So that's how we initially got acquainted. And
Yes.
you just, in giving a little bit of background about yourself, shared about the iconography traditionally being a representation of that relationship between humanity and the divine. Yet
Hmm.
your work has gone beyond that to include the critters of the earth and
Yes.
how they facilitate our relationship with the divine. So, my question for you now is, when did you first sense that your being an artist and making art was a way of listening to the earth and not just expressing yourself?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that there's a division between those two things, expressing yourself and listening to the earth, because we're
Mm.
all part of the earth. So if we're listening to ourselves, essentially we should be listening to the earth. So my expression is a function of my listening to the earth. And when that first really came about was I read the accounts of the astronauts seeing the Earth from space and their mystical experiences, and how when they came back from space, they tried to impact the way people thought about the Earth, and that inspired me, along with readings from Teilhard, as a matter of fact, to create a series of artworks called Conscious Evolution, The World at One, that was done in the medium of batik and color Xerox. And so I have this really great quote from Rusty Schweickart, who you may know as an Apollo 9 astronaut. And what he said, the thing of it is in reading these accounts, I was able to put myself uh, in their position, and I felt what it would be like to see the Earth from that perspective, and they really expressed it so well. So Rusty Schweickart, for instance, he you may know this quote when he speaks about it is so small and so fragile and such a precious little spot on that little blue and white thing is everything that means everything to you, all of history and music and poetry and art and death and birth, love, tears, joy, games, all of it on that little spot, and you could cover it up with your thumb.
Mm.
And that was his unexpected experience during I think his camera jammed when he was up there, and he had nothing to do. And so he
Okay.
just looked at the earth and it blew his mind.
That reminds me of the Carl Sagan quote about the pale blue dot.
Yeah.
Very similar in that way too. Yeah.
Yes. And well, he was talking about like seeing the earth from even farther out, where it's almost imperceptible.
Yeah.
And then the other quote was from Teilhard, which inspired actually one of the pieces, a 9-foot banner entitled "Chain Reaction." And for me, it expresses his most hopeful vision of the future. And from some of your other interviewees, you've discussed this, so I'm just gonna read it to you.
Sure.
See what you think. It reads, and this quote is handwritten, actually, is silkscreened onto this 9-foot banner, along with a picture of the Earth from space. Everywhere on Earth at this moment, in the new spiritual atmosphere created by the idea of evolution, there float, in a state of extreme mutual sensitivity, love of God and faith in the world, the two essential components of the ultra-human. These two components are everywhere in the air, sooner or later there will be a chain reaction. And I like to think of this, especially in hard times like now, that vision of this these mutually sensitive spirits coming together and forming a chain reaction to bring our planet to another state of being, of unity and diversity. So, to answer your question simply, whatever I do, including my art, is a result of listening to the earth. How I travel, what I eat, my politics, and my art. So
I appreciate how you answered that, how you gave kind of the both and together, right? Yeah.
yeah.
So what is your exposure like, or rather, how do you engage with the world of matter in a way that allows you to then translate that into artwork?
Well, something that people don't necessarily realize is the materials that I use in creating icons.
Hmm.
First of all, they're all in their natural state, and that's because. Sorry, I'm just going to quit my mail program so we don't hear that dinging. In order to give glory to God, you work in materials that have not been processed. So they're the most rudimentary. So I use pigments, powdered pigments that are made from ground up semi-precious stones, earth ochre, clay, marble dust and chalk, wood, and so you're working with these elements, and they're absolutely divine. They're so
Hmm.
beautiful. So that's one way of, connecting to the earth. And also earlier in my career, I was doing plein air landscape painting, which is where you take your easel and your paints and you go out into the field and you immerse yourself in your subject matter. So that was really a tremendous, in all kinds of weather and weather conditions, and it was almost like a sport.
Hmm.
But yeah, and then the other, it's kind of tangential. I don't know, but my spiritual formation
Hmm.
involved literally soil, stone, water, and steam while participating in sweat lodges on the Southern Ute Reservation, where I had been invited to attend the sun dances there. So over 7 years, I'd go every year and participate in the sweat lodges, which were for the people who had come to support the sun dancers, their families, and stuff like that. So that was tremendous. And if you've been in one, you know how rigorous it is, and you get humble really fast. And your response is to pray, which is what it's about. So those elements are akin to the bread and wine. It's just soil, stones, heated up stones, and water, and fire. So that's pretty
Yeah,
much.
I really appreciate how you incorporated your spiritual formation in that too. I think it really exemplifies what you're doing with your art and the mediums and materials that you're using. I've never had the privilege of participating in a sweat lodge yet. I'd be open to it, but I can attest to just extended exercise and how you really start to perspire and how that certainly can pull off layers of the onion, so to speak, psychologically, spiritually. I'm a big fan of saunas too.
Mhm.
And now, cold plunging and cold therapy is becoming very popular. I admittedly am more challenged to get into that. But yeah, it's just exposing ourselves to the elements, right?
Our
Um, uh,
physical nature, we're all in our heads, with a lot of this digital stuff. And I think the body, is where we actually meet the divine. you know?
Yeah, yeah, and that's not to say that we can't encounter God through, a more synthetic medium in some way, or through a computer screen or something like that, because it certainly is facilitating that connection. But there is something to be said about our conscious relationship with those things and how we really aren't too conscious, at least not as a species, speaking in with a broad brush, in terms of our conscious relationship with the planet. It still seems like there is a huge gap there for so many of us. And I speak of that personally too, as much of
Yeah.
an advocate for the environment as I am, and as much as I like to say that I'm a gardener, an outdoorsman, whatever I want to label myself as. I just see these huge gaps in my life where it's like, there's a lot of work to do there when it comes to nurturing and deepening that relationship in my own life with the environment.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a process, you know. I mean, I only stopped eating meat about, well, after I met James Robinson, who's the professor at Iona University, where I had a show. I think it was in 2023, and he's a vegan, and just after learning about like the cruelty in the factory farm industry, I didn't want to be a part of the suffering, you know? So it's a gradual advance, in terms of kindness towards the planet, kindness towards other beings, and ourselves too.
Yeah, and it's a matter of too acknowledging how different we are all, and how we meet our needs and our needs are met in different ways, where and we can get into a larger conversation about this at another time maybe, but it's not like veganism holds any sort of biological or moral high ground. It's just a way that works for people in terms of their harmony with the environment. Do I think it's the right way for all people? No, and we don't need to get into that, but it's like there is a way to deepen one's connection with the earth in a way that doesn't involve that mass suffering like you're referring to,
Yeah.
with not just even factory farming, but I mean, like a lot of the greens and all of the forbs that are eaten um, uh, by vegetarians and vegans come at the expense of all the animals that get killed: moles, voles, rats, mice, groundhogs, squirrels, rabbits, at the expense of keeping that farm going, right? So it's like, really, we are called to immerse ourselves in this relationship and to find a way that is most sustainable based on our physical composition, right? And what our body needs medically, nutritionally, what our local geography needs in terms of maybe how we need to nurture that relationship. It's something that is so immersive and complex. It calls for such a high degree of consciousness. And it just always brings me back to that point of relationship. How does your relationship with the earth enhance your relationship with God, with other people, with the community you live in, with your body and its health, and all these things? And there's never like one right answer. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, because it speaks to this moving, dynamic reality that we're a part of in that way, and that Teilhard spoke so much about, and that he really calls us to be in participation with that way. Um,
I just have to say one thing though.
sure.
You'll be happy to know that regenerative agriculture and other forms of biodynamic agriculture,
Mhm.
there are ways of farming that don't harm animals. So I just want to put that in there, like
Mm.
it's the industrial farming that clears away, you know, all those critters that you mentioned.
Yeah. Mhm.
There's a way to integrate them too. Um, but like you said, that's another conversation. So
Yeah, yeah. This gets really complex, and yeah, I'm big into permaculture too. So I'm all about redundancy and stacking and alternative
right,
solutions
right,
in that
right.
way
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like again, I think it calls us to relationship, calls us to participation, and it calls us to really hone in on like, okay, how can I best plug into my environment here and hopefully enhance it in some way. Thomas Berry calls for that mutual enhancement, right, of our human lives, of all the other kin lives that are out there, all the other animals. So, again, Teilhard spoke of this evolution that we are a part of here, we're participating in. It's moving us toward, very in line with what we're talking about here, a more integral way of seeing, a more integral state of awareness. How would you say that your experience of art allows you a participation in that larger evolution?
Well, my art is really designed to be a part of that evolution through influencing and moving people
Mm,
to become more conscious, more inclusive, kinder. And so, yeah, I mean, I intentionally work that way. So not only do I have these icons which display creatures in their glory, which is very compelling. And the wonderful thing about icons is their beauty draws you in. That's the whole point. And then it draws you in to the point where they become windows to the divine. And then you see beyond them to the spiritual reality beyond them. So, yeah, that's very much what I do with my work. And, consciously to help foster the spiritual evolution of this planet. Jane Goodall, I don't know if you've read a couple of her books on hope, but she says, this is very Teilhardian. She says, and oh, you must know this. Herein lies the real hope for our future. We're moving towards the ultimate destiny of our species, a state of compassion and love.
mm,
So that's more or less what I'm trying to do, is
mhm,
raise consciousness. And I think that's part of the evolution that Teilhard speaks about.
mm.
Um, I like to use the word cultivate rather than build the earth,
Okay.
but I'm sure you probably appreciate that too as a gardener.
Yeah.
It's a less mechanical type term.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that as much as I do, or I'm trying to learn to appreciate build. I'm not much of a builder in terms of like building things with wood and all that. I try to learn, but I appreciate cultivate as well. That's a different way to look at it, and I like that.
Yeah.
So, along with this theme of conscious evolution, very rich within Teilhard, there is this theme of emergence. It's
Right.
really kind of letting things in a way. I mean, we've heard the expression "let go, let God," and that's
Mm.
kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it
Um,
is, isn't it?
but it's really this unfolding of evolution, this unfolding of life, this unfolding of reality. How do you honor that theme and dynamic within your work? Like, how do you honor that larger theme with how you express it, but then really within your process and when you're just first coming up with the idea for what you're going to draw, then paint, and then write as an icon. What's that process like for you in terms of emergence?
Well, Thomas Berry once counseled me uh, to follow what fascinates me.
Mm,
It's really actually very simple, and that's what I do. The emergence comes out of that. It's kind of an obedience, but not a burden.
mm,
So, so that's what I've done. I mean, even uh, from, I mean, I could give you loads of examples that, the idea of Jung's idea of synchronicity. I think it maybe, relates a little bit to this idea of emergence. But the whole trajectory of my life, it's like one emergent situation after another, which just keeps complexifying and leading to more integration and more coherence and complexity. And I'm getting away from the theme of emergence, but I keep thinking of like this idea of synergy because
It's
um,
okay.
I'm
It all
always
flows
doing
together.
this stuff. Yeah, I'm always like combining opposites. Okay. Like when I did that series of conscious evolution, that was a combination of batik, which is an ancient form of textile design, and color Xerox, which is a very, contemporary
Mm,
technical medium, and combining them, and in so doing, showing the well, it became a third entity.
mm.
And the medium actually was the message because you have the modern and you have the ancient and they coexist. And so, when I went back to iconography to portray a different subject matter, it was kind of the same thing, where I was taking the ancient and this new concept, fairly new concept, at least for, Westerners
Mhm.
to venerate, and appreciate other species that we're a part of. And it's not, it it's more than that because the idea of biodiversity, like what is behind it for me spiritually, is something that Thomas Aquinas wrote, and and here it is. He says, because the divine could not image itself forth in any one being, it created the great diversity of things, so that what was lacking in one would be supplied by the other, and the whole universe together would participate in and manifest the divine more than any single being whatsoever. So it's the whole universe that is an expression of the divine. And so I'm, matter and spirit are not separate in
Mhm.
the icons. And um, that's what I love to see, when people look at the work, um, they have that sense, they don't necessarily look at it just viscerally or anything. It's a whole experience,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, and that was kind of my next question because you talked earlier about how really the goal of your work, your art, is to move people, to make them feel something in some way. Um, so, is there a contemplative aspect to it too, would you say?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the whole point, especially in icons, like I was
Yeah.
saying before, they're meant to draw you in.
Yeah.
And
And my
so
my
that's the physical. That's the physical part. And then, what washes over you is like this immense beauty. And there are these quotes about beauty that I absolutely love. Like one of the Hindu texts says, "I am beauty among beautiful things."
Hmm.
And then another one by Hilary of Poitiers, who says, "The sky and the air are beautiful. The earth and the sea are beautiful. By divine grace, the universe was called by the Greeks cosmos, meaning ornament.
Hmm.
Surely the author of all created beauty must be the beauty of all beauty." And so these these artworks, they're holistic in a way,
Yeah.
because and yeah, I don't.
Well, I'm thinking as you were responding to my question, I'm realizing that I asked the question in the way that I didn't want it to come across because it created this contrast. And yeah, I think that there naturally is this contemplative, implicit contemplative nature to icons that, like you said, draws us in, immerses us. And I think ultimately really is our call to embody that which we are beholding in some way. We are beholding a relationship between the divine and human, or the divine and creation in some way, is a larger terminology. And it's not even the divine end. It's just we're looking at a human that is also divine, a creature, a bee, a bird that is also divine in some way, right? A plant, yeah, and that calls us to contemplate then and embody that in some way. Yeah, yeah. What would you say that the most challenging aspect of your artwork right now currently is? I know that you've mentioned the political turmoil is tough for you. Um, there's some other challenging aspects in the world, just some, as if we don't have a lot going on to be troubled and concerned about. But really, like, what internally is challenging to you as you sit down and you have that blank canvas? How do you get motivated, or how do you overcome that challenge to start?
Do you know, I have to say, mercifully, I don't find those challenges in creating art anymore.
That's awesome. Is
Yeah,
that something you initially struggled with or found challenging?
yes, I mean, I went through 10 years of like a dry period
Mm.
during which, I had two serious illnesses back to back. And yeah, I mean, I was lost, and being without a mission for somebody like me is like agony. And
Mhm.
so, when this all came together, that I could express, my love for nature, integrate science, integrate, spirituality into my art, it's a tremendous relief to just know that I'm on the right path.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
trauma, does affect one's creativity and the ability to imagine. So those illnesses and, some of their personal stuff, it was really, really challenging. But,
Mhm.
I just pray that, I've, I've gone beyond that and I just am doing my work now, what
Yeah.
I'm meant to do in the world.
Was there a practice or a process or a learning that you needed to engage in some way in order to kind of come out of that dry period? Or was
Well,
it?
it's funny that you should say that because, I worship with the Quakers a lot, and one of the things that they have, in the way they're structured, you can ask for a clearness committee. And I was so stuck that I asked some dear Quaker friends if we could do a clearness committee about what I'm meant to do, with my work. Because after I had been sick for so long, I had all of these projects that never got off the ground. They were on the drawing board. And it's like, do I pick up one of these? Are they even alive for me anymore? And so I, I brought together like four women, who I've been involved with for many years through Quakers, and we met like a couple of times, and then it was astonishing because these clearness committees, they ask you questions. Nobody tells you anything, right? So they, it kind of draws things out, and then I go away and let things work on an unconscious level. And the weird thing was, what happened was, I went to a retreat at one of Thich Nhat Hanh's monasteries up in upstate New York, Blue Cliff Monastery. And I came, and it was in March, and I came out of the meditation hall like around 6 in the morning, and there's this big lotus pond there. And the pond was thawing, but it was creating these geometrical patterns of ice. I'd never seen anything like this. And I just, I came back and I took photographs, and they're just extraordinary. And that was the beginning of thawing of my, my frozen creativity. It was like,
Wow.
kind of like a real symbolic. And then after that, um, yes, the icons, this movement to apply my skills and my practice of traditional iconography to
Mhm.
these new subject matter. Yeah, so it was amazing, how that worked. But it had to. I guess you have to be sort of like at the end of your rope, to kind of do what I did, to just gather people and say, "Help! And it's so wonderful
Yeah,
that that was available to me, you know.
absolutely. And you have a community of people that you trust and faith in that way. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking of the quote platitude, maybe even that we're often closest to God when we're most in need in that way. And I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of how really this healing, this this thawing was facilitated through nature as the medium. You're there observing and you're watching this pond thaw, and there it is providing you with a response in some way that then humbles you and opens you up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I was on a recent episode talking with Brian McLaren, and something I struggling to see was how our shifting our, as Barry talked about, or entrancement from the Technozoic to the Ecozoic would be
Yeah.
this, in a way, path to salvation, a path to encountering God at a deeper level and deeper facets of relationship. And I said it was really not until I got into like gardening and then some small livestock farming and then hunting, like you just
Wow.
kind of find yourself falling down this rabbit hole, and you find yourself believing like, yes, no, that this is possible to shift our entrancement from this thing and these screens that we're so inundated by to something that is integrated and home very much and a part of us, and we're a part of it, and calls us more into that relationship. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about my own experience in that way, other that by being open to the earth and what it might have to offer, and even some of the most unexpected ways. Like, I couldn't have told you that 10 years ago I would be getting interested in chicken farming or hunting or something
That's
like
great.
that.
I'm envious.
Yeah, well, it comes with its own challenges and frustrations, but yeah, it's just what a gift is what I'm saying, and such an unexpected grace in that way too. So, yeah, to just highlight your experience there, such a beautiful story of this thawing and your creativity being able to flourish from that. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, so I was going to ask you, Angela. We just talked about challenges, but now what allows you to hope?
well, it's very challenging these days, as you know. And but I have to say, foremost would be the writings of Jane Goodall,
Okay.
who she wrote two books on hope, and she describes, the hope that the tremendous hope that she had for the future, because based on her real world experience with people from all over the globe working to regenerate the earth and protect species. I mean, that's somebody who was, had boots on the ground, so to speak.
Yeah.
And she always used, one of my favorite things she said was, "We just have to swell the ranks."
Hmm.
So that was her, her mission, was to bring her message to as many people as possible.
I like that. Now, was Jane Goodall, was she the one that was living with the animals for a
Yeah,
while? Yeah,
yeah.
with chimpanzees and
Yes, yes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she was this young woman, by herself, and she was just fearless. I mean, just reading her story is at a time when this was just not done, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was fearless. And yeah, she made some real strides, in terms of showing that the sentience of the
Mm-hmm.
chimpanzees.
Hmm.
So it really changed the way people thought. They actually stopped experimenting on chimpanzees because of her work,
Hmm.
and so much more. She established all kinds of programs to get people involved, planting trees and things like that. And the second thing that gives me hope
Yeah.
is that life violates the second law of thermodynamics.
How
That,
so?
well, because in the second law is about dissipation, things dissipate. But
Mm.
life is the opposite. I heard this in a talk by Carl Safina. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's
Mm.
a an ecologist, and he writes
Okay.
a lot about sentience. And in his book about actually elephant communication and intelligence and social behavior, amazing. But instead of dissipation, the universe, as you know, creates new and more complex forms. It's not dissipating,
Mm.
you know? And
Right.
so I feel it's the life principle itself. So despite the destruction that we see all around us now, which I guess, is also part of creating,
Yeah.
chaos, it's the basis of order, order comes out of chaos. And that's actually explicit. That's part of the process that I use in creating icons. Is you start with these the level of chaos when you
Mm.
symbolically, and so despite the destruction that we see around us, because of the structure of the universe, I have hope for the future. Although not in the near future, I do think we have to go through some kind of purgation.
Yeah. Yeah. We're certainly probably not approaching, but within some sort of bottleneck right now. And that's why maybe we feel like the walls are closing in a little bit. But maybe that's what a baby feels when it's passing through the birth canal into the waking world away from its mother, probably feels like death. It probably feels like everything I knew is comfortable and home and secure is going to be gone in just a second here. And what's on the
Yeah.
other side of that? Well, yeah, we are certainly in some sort of tunnel, some sort of process right now, it feels like. And it's not comfortable. And being comfortable with it being uncomfortable seems to be like a necessary skill. I'd imagine that your
Yeah,
artwork in some way allows you to navigate that. No?
it does. I mean, it's a comfort, you know.
Hmm.
It's challenging, but I am comforted by those pigments, by those
Yeah.
materials. When I mix you mix all those pigments, by the way, with egg yolk. An emulsion of egg yolk and white distilled vinegar and water.
Okay.
And you see, then you put it on the board, the gessoed board, and it creates, depending on which pigments you're using, it forms these patterns, you know, and it's soothing to me. So although I'm aware, and have grief around what's going on, this sustains me.
Mm.
If I were to just focus on the problem, it would be impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're keeping your connection with creation in that way too. I almost think of how the practice of grounding is becoming more popular, where people just stand outside on the earth in bare feet, because then your body gains greater resonance with what's the word I'm looking for? The vibration of the earth, right?
Yeah.
Or how eating whole and organic foods is better than eating processed foods, right? You're not to say there's anything wrong with working with acrylics or oil paints or anything like that, but you're working with some natural materials in a way that for you is grounding, it's healing, it's centering, it's facilitating, cultivating that relationship with creation.
Yeah, very much
Yeah.
so. It's my saving grace.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we all need one of those, or at least a few of those, maybe nowadays, like you said, with so much going on in the world. You referred to an experience earlier when I forget what you called it, but field painting.
Oh,
Um,
plein air
Plein
painting.
air, yeah, you
Yeah.
like kind of observing and painting and almost then becoming a part of this landscape. And it made me think of like almost like a mystical type experience where there is no separation before you've also alluded to matter and spirit sharing a oneness in this way. Have there been moments when you've been creating art where you have that sense of mysticism, where you feel like the art itself is collaborating with you? Or I'm sorry, the earth itself is collaborating with you through your art?
Well, I do think that with plein air landscape painting, it's very true because you know you're immersed in nature, but you're apart from it because you're rendering it on the canvas. But the state of mind is to be relaxed and alert at the same time,
Mm.
and to allow it to come through you. So it's not, I mean, you have skills, there's training involved, but yeah, I mean, some of the places that I have painted, it's unbelievable. The beauty is just, I did a lot of my painting in the high desert in Colorado, and which is one of the most beautiful spots on the planet. And so just imagine yourself being out there, in the elements and capturing the light, on sagebrush or, pinyon tree. It's extraordinary. So there is a mystical. In fact, I did a series of a lone pinyon tree with the Mount Blanca in the background, which is one of the four sacred mountains of the Navajo. And from a Carmelite monastery, I was on retreat, and so I was granted permission to paint there in all four seasons. So I went, in winter and summer, and then in different times of the day. And yeah, it was, well, if you see my work, if you see those, actually, if you look at them, I think I was successful in capturing that glory. In fact, one of them is called Morning Glory. And, it was in the height of summer, and everything was in bloom. And it's the desert, so that's something too, that, things blooming in the desert is very evocative. So, yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky. And it's all about the medium, now that I'm talking about it. It's, and its connection to history. So, the medieval aspect of these, of egg tempera, and, batik, which is ancient medium of textile design that originated in the East. Yeah, so I just follow what fascinates me, and, it takes me places. What can I say?
And that was Thomas Berry suggested that to you, follow what fascinates you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That makes me think of Joseph Campbell and his adage of chase your bliss or follow your bliss,
exactly.
and how he
Yeah,
took that from in Hinduism, they have the Sat, Chit, and Ananda, beauty, consciousness, and bliss. He goes, well, I'm
okay.
not sure what beauty and consciousness are, but I know what my bliss is, and I think I can pursue that. So,
Yeah, and what's really sad is that some people are, they have to choose between their bliss and something more practical. So
mm,
I just feel so fortunate that I can do what I love.
yeah. And I recently saw a quote about something about how, you've started to find a facet of your bliss or an element of it or a pathway to it when that's what you do on the side or in your free time, but that's what feels like your full-time job. And then your full-time job really kind of feels like just part-time. What you're doing is sustain this other thing. And that's a unique way of looking at it, but I think there's a good amount of truth in that.
Yeah, the Quakers have something called your competency. So
Yeah.
that's what you do, to make money, but then you have this other life, which is
Yeah.
really your spiritual and your what they call your leading, what you're led to do in this life.
Mm.
So
Mm. Sounds like you've learned a lot from the Quakers there.
I really have.
Yeah, yeah.
I was very lucky there too because I was sent to a Quaker high school, and that changed everything. Um, because the Catholic schools that I went to, it was the old school nuns that had to, had to beat it out of you, like
Yeah,
if
I'm
you were
sure
a
that's
little bit,
good.
if you had a little bit of spunk in you. Whereas the Quakers, they believe in the goodness of human beings, so they draw out the best in you. You know, it was so totally different. I was so disoriented when I first went to this Quaker high school because they weren't, you know, shaking their fingers at me. You know, you know, they draw people's gifts out, and they did that with me, with my art, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. You've been able to keep that relationship too in your own unique way. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, Angela, I'm really grateful for all that you've shared today about yourself, your personal journey, your artwork, your struggles, your hopes. I'm just, curious now. We ask all our guests this: how are you finding synergy with the sacred in your life nowadays?
Um, well, let's see now. Um, I guess in my own life, I think it's pretty much what I describe, but I can go a little deeper into that.
If you want to, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, you know, one thing I don't talk about very much, but you know, because synergy, you know, is dependent on connectivity, right? If you don't, it's like, you know, what's happening now in the world is, you know, information is being blocked, or false information is being put out, and some information is being withheld. You know, so it's blocking synergy. So what do you do? Like when, you know, people are dependent on the news, you know, to figure out what's going on. I mean, Thomas Berry said plainly that we needed to go into our genetic coding because
Mm.
our cultural coding has been kind of tainted, you know, by, you know, our culture. That's redundant, but anyway, you get what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what I've done is, in order to access that deeper part of my psyche, I've I've undergone hypnosis.
Hmm.
And there's a very interesting story around that, um,
Sure.
because um, I, you know, during this hypnosis session, I started to sob uncontrollably, and I just blurted out, "They're destroying the earth." You know, this was back in the 80s, and I could feel like viscerally what was happening to the earth. You know, the drilling and the, you know, the clear cutting and the, you know, uh, you know, all the ways that the earth is violated,
Hmm.
and that set me on my path to, you know, to do something about it. But it was, you know, that, I guess, that experience of identification with the earth.
Hmm.
Um, and and the other thing that I do is, I pay attention to my dreams, because that is not your conscious mind either. And there's things happening there. And, you know, the Indians have, you know, this term of big dreams, you know, like there's the other kind of dreams that you have that you're just processing stuff during the day. But I did have, I did have a couple of big dreams, and I'll tell you one of them. I was trapped in a room with people, and the door was locked, and I realized I'm never getting out of here. And it, you know, it was visceral. This sense of panic, and I tried every way to get out. You know, things that you know, sort of things that I wouldn't normally do because I was just so desperate. And what happened was, someone came to redeem me
Hmm.
from the outside. I had no power whatsoever, and they negotiated. And this person said that I was his right hand man, and that he couldn't do his work without me. And so I was let out, and I realized that I have a purpose and that I need to be faithful to it.
Mm.
So that, I don't know if that answers your question about synergy, but it's connecting to something deeper than that then informs you and changes you. And yeah, that's one of the experiences I had. And then just to be obedient to those messages.
Well, I'm very grateful for you sharing both of those. Really appreciate that. Yeah, it seems like both of those, hypnosis and dream work, are pretty efficient ways to bypass our ego, which can be, I think, at the trying to think of the Swami who initially said it, but I can't recall his name, so I'm going to go with who quoted the Swami, who is the teacher Ram Dass or Richard Alpert.
Mhm.
And it's that the ego is a terrible master, but it's a wonderful servant. And it must be at service of our higher self, our higher identity. Um, and yeah, our ego will keep us locked in a room, quite literally, right?
Well, you
Of the
know what?
way
I
we
never even
think and
thought
how
of
things
that.
should be. And if it were up to me and I were king for a day, I'd solve all the, right? And it's like, we need to get beyond ourselves at some point. Yeah.
I never even thought of that. Thank you for, that little interpretation that
Yeah, sure, sure,
maybe with
sure.
the ego. And I was in there with a bunch of people who thought they knew everything.
There you go. Right. Yeah, all the different facets of our personality that thinks they know this about that and that about this and how, yeah, yeah, if we could only just dial that down and turn that volume down, right?
That's what ritual is for, you know.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, and I suppose dream interpretation is a kind of ritual because I have thousands and thousands of dreams,
Yeah.
that I've back until the 1980s, when I started this. So yeah, that could be a way for people.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing those. Those are the types of answers that I really hope for when I ask that type of question, because I think it can give people something practical to maybe work with themselves if it resonates, right? We're all so different and we all connect to the divine in so many different ways. So,
Yeah,
uh,
there's a book called Dreams, God's Forgotten Language. Do you know that
okay.
one?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't,
a
but
good one.
I'm familiar with that quote. I think it was Carl Jung said that we're used to God speaking in dreams and images, and we've forgotten that's how God speaks to a large extent. Yeah. I'll have
Yeah,
to check that out. So, speaking of ritual, and like I said, I've been very grateful for all that you've shared as we kind of wind down here to the end of our time. You have an oracle card deck, right?
yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, the larger question here is like, how can people learn more about you and your work? But I know this is your newest project that you've just released and process of putting out there.
Yeah.
Um, so can you tell us a little bit about it? But then I have the question of, can you define what an Oracle card deck is? I have an idea, but not, an actual definition, and the ritual of how we use it.
Well, first of all, I wasn't totally happy with the word oracle, but
Okay,
that's how the publishers uh, felt it would be best marketed. But then I
gotcha.
looked at the deeper meaning um, of the word, and it's an oracle is a source of prophetic meaning.
Hmm.
So, in a sense, it is an oracle because, but why is it that way? Well, I happen to have this right here. This is the
Nice.
here it is. And so I have another story, but I don't know how much time you have. But I had a dream about this like
Mm.
in 2007.
Oh, cool.
And I wasn't doing icons. I wasn't, it, it was one of these prophetic dreams, as a matter of fact. But in any case, so um, what you have is these 36 cards, and you can just you pick one. So like here is the honeybee. And over here is a QR code. And that
Mm.
QR code goes to an environmental organization that's helping to preserve this particular species. Each one of them has
Cool.
yeah, it's great. So you have an activist component, but what you also have is these exercises that you can do. Each animal has a page, and there's wisdom, which
Mm.
gives you the story about the animal, what their plight is, their status, whether they're endangered, critically endangered, threatened, etc. And then you do something called Visio Divina, and which you may know what that is. So it's really based in the Orthodox Christian tradition, which is the icons, where you're, instead of Lectio Divina, which is very, well known in Western Christianity, reading passages from the Bible and contemplating. So this is you contemplate the image, and then here's a pangolin, for instance, which is very critically endangered. And you spend some time gazing at the image, and then you're invited to reflect upon it, through journaling and automatic writing, and then you have a chance to take action. And so you scan these codes, and it'll take you to one of 18 different organizations that I partnered with around the world. So there's conservation organizations in the Philippines, in Australia for the Sumatran orangutan, for Coral Reef Alliance, all over the place. And so it's a workout, it works your intuition, with this Visio Divina. It also is, there's a discursive part of it, when you're reading, the scientific facts about this critter. And then you get to actually take action, which the biologist Sandra Steingraber says she coined the term, why do I stumble on this? Well-informed futility. So the antidote is meaningful action. So you go through this process with these cards, and then you get to take action. And I'm actually designing right now a group, a way to facilitate a group, because that's the way you can really get some synergy going. So imagine you have 10 people that are, they pick a card, and then they go through this process, and then afterwards they get to talk about it and possibly form new alliances, express their grief or whatever it is that comes up for them. And, it animates people, it moves people. And that's what I hope to do with this deck.
It sounds very integral, very Teilhardian. It's taking the animal, it's taking the artwork, it's taking your technology to scan it, to learn about it and feed your mind, right? To move your heart. Very cool. I love how you did that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very excited about it. And, I kind of just want to go back to my contemplative life. But I'm in the process now of talking a lot about it, which is challenging.
Oh,
But
you find a contemplative component of that, right? Contemplative in action.
yes, that's a way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Angela, where can folks find the rest of your body of artwork, and
Okay,
how can they connect with you?
right. So I have a website. It's just angelamanno.com. And you can find out about my upcoming exhibition at the Murray Art Center in Findhorn, Scotland. And you'll also read that I'm going to be doing a panel discussion with feminist theologian Elizabeth Johnson and an Orthodox theologian from Fordham. And we're going to be discussing iconography, spirituality, and the environment.
Mm.
And so they'll, the Zoom link will be on there. Anybody can join in. And there'll be links, if people are interested in getting this deck. There's ways to do that too. And I have distributors all over the planet. So like if you live in Australia, you could get it, there. I don't have to ship it all the way to Australia because it costs about $50 to do that. So yeah. So yes, and of course, there's a way to contact me on my website as well.
Excellent. Well, Angela, thank you so much for sharing these avenues for folks to get in touch with you and to further immerse themselves in your work. I hope that our conversation today has been inspiring for anyone new who's not seen of or heard your work before, so that they can engage that in some way. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today and to, again, share your journey, some of your struggles, some of your triumphs in this great evolutionary tapestry that we're all a part of here. I don't want to trivialize it by using the art language, but I think that's a beautiful way to describe it in terms of a collaborative project where we're all in some way a thread within that larger creation.
Yes. We all have our particular work to do.
Yeah. So real quick, before we sign off here, what would you say to someone who says that they don't do art or they can't do art? How would you try and inspire them to create something?
Well, that's kind of something that's been drummed into people.
Mm,
First of all, we're all creative, and
mm,
we might not be creating works of art, but you create your life, and you
mm.
have a vision of what you want, and you pursue it. So that's a form of creativity. As far as art itself, there's different ways to go about it. I mean, go to an art store and look at the materials and find what fascinates you.
Mm.
It could be pastels, it could be oils. I would caution people away from watercolors because they're really hard and it's just a source of frustration a lot of the time. But play,
Mm.
and yeah, I mean, the conditioning, where people have been told they can't do stuff.
Mhm.
There's actually a really good book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, which I would recommend to people, who struggle. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, because it's just something I hear so often. I mean, I am not an artist, but when I was a kid, I took art lessons and I've just always felt comfortable creating in that way. Like I haven't ever felt like, oh, I'm going to be judged for this or I did it the wrong way or something. It was just something I was raised with, and I'm really grateful for my parents and the people that were around me and, forming me that way. So it's a challenge for me. And yeah, I agree with you. It's been drummed into people, and I agree with you. So thank you for sharing that in your own words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well,
people,
Angela,
if people want to do art, they should do it, but I can't, I'm innumerate. That's a word. I'm not gonna, thank God for computers, and calculators. But so not everybody's meant to do the same thing. But if you have a desire to, by all means, you should.
where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Angela, thank you so much for all that you've shared today. I've been grateful to be able to connect with you across the pond here. You're over in Scotland, so grateful
Hmm.
that you made the time. And like I said, I hope this conversation benefits all those and inspires people to create art with their life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good way to end.